Okay, I'm going to present mergers and acquisitions in India today. My name is Julie Rosenthal. I work for a company called EFS Consultants in London, and we also have an office in India and in other places, but clearly you are sitting here because your interest probably lies mostly in India. I will also be talking about setting up a business in India later on. I already have given a presentation on setting up business in India, so I'm not going to go and make a 30-minute presentation on this subject, but I can maybe give a quick summary if that is the interest of the majority of people here today. Okay, why would anybody want to consider merging or acquiring a company in India? It is clearly usually a consideration a company is making because they want to expand, they want to become bigger, they want to go into a new market. They're thinking of acquiring a new technology, having the benefits of cheaper labor, and clearly India is one of the biggest countries in which you can do business. Now, merger. You hear the word mergers and acquisitions usually used unanimously. It's something quite different. A merger is a situation where a company takes shares in another company. It can be a certain proportion, it could be 20, 30, 40, it can be up to 50% really. That would be considered a merger. And then there's an acquisition. An acquisition usually means that the majority of shareholding is taken over by another company. One has to say that usually a acquisition doesn't usually an acquisition is the one that is mostly used. A merger is quite unusual. The most recent event, you probably read in the news the other day that British Airways has merged with Iberia. The question is, was this a merger or was this acquisition? Clearly the holding company is going to be in Spain, so I wonder whether it is either or. So I'll leave it to you to make that decision. India is a very, very big market. It's the emerging market. It's got a population of 1.2 billion people, and it's vast. If you think of the United Kingdom in comparison to the population in India, in comparison to the vast size of the country, there is no comparison. So you have the market, you have access to natural resources, you've got access to a cheaper labor force, you've got access to less regulation, I guess, and all those things that make it very attractive to go and invest there. The biggest consideration when investing in another country is clearly what are my main benefits, and once I've decided on what the benefits are going to be, I will have to decide, well, how can I reap those benefits? And usually one has to look at overcoming red tape. India is very big on red tape. They have a tremendous bureaucracy. Any kind of work and any kind of trade situation, one can most likely have to ask for a license. There are many different departments. One department or one government department doesn't necessarily know what the other government department is doing or what their rules are. Having said that, it is all possible, and in the end of the day, one has to look at the benefit and not necessarily at the red tape. The easiest to do in order to go down a route of merging with another company in India is to go via, obviously, some professionals who are close to the ground, who know the market, who know the government departments, and who can give us a clear idea and understanding what we're getting involved in. At the moment, one has to say that a lot of the government state-owned companies are being divested. This is clearly a very interesting scenario for bigger companies over here who are thinking of going to India. It's a great opportunity because these state-owned companies have access to a tremendous proportion of the economy and have been servicing the economy, probably not very well. They usually are very bad run companies. They require a tremendous amount of investment. They require technology transfers. They require skills. They require organization and management transfers. But it's a big interest, and state-owned industries that are being sold off are clearly a big target at the moment, and I would suspect they're going to be a big target for the next 5 or 10 years. The proximity to having natural resources close by is clearly a benefit. There are no shipping costs, there's no import, no export licenses to be asked for. So having a large country which is so rich in natural resources as India is clearly a big benefit. The one big issue is the low staff cost. Maybe the biggest thing I should mention here is the difference between the UK and India. There is probably a difference of something like 600% at the moment. If you think about the cost of living in India being probably 10% of what it is here in India, there's a tremendous discrepancy there, and I think it will take a good 20 or 25 years for India to catch up. So there again, it's a benefit. Now these kind of benefits apply not only in the situation of a merger or an acquisition, but they also apply for a scenario where the company is just going to be set up. So if you're thinking of setting up business in India, that is also a benefit that has to be looked at. The other issue is if you are thinking of merging with a company in India for the purpose of exporting maybe back to the UK or exporting back to the European Union, there are tremendous advantages. There are allowances, there are tax deduction, there's support, there is even a sort of a clear period in which you don't have to pay taxes at all if you are going to export into another country. Well, and finally, I guess the English is widely spoken, though sometimes it's overestimated. There is obviously a large part of the population, especially the less educated people, that don't speak English. But everybody else of middle management and upper management would have to speak English, and it is indeed widely spoken over there. What are the hurdles? Now, India is an exchange control economy. And what does that mean? Exchange control means that you're not allowed to transfer money in and out of the country freely. So if you're a company over here and you want to invest over there, it's not something you can do lightly, or it's not something you can do with just by going to your bank and saying, oh, I want to send money into this account. There are usually permissions to be gotten hold of, and occasionally one has to even do a quite extensive application process if this is going to be a larger transfer, or indeed if there's a large proportion of shares that are going to be paid for. There's a act which is called the FEMA, which is the Foreign Exchange Management Act, which is the guiding legislation to get money in and out, or getting foreign currency in and out of the country. It all being regulated by the supervisory authority, which is the Reserve Bank of India. They are doing they're doing an excellent job if you consider that it is not easy to be regulating such vast transfers of currencies in and out of the country. And they're doing it pretty efficiently. Now there's two routes you can do, and again, it doesn't only apply for mergers and acquisitions, but it also applies for just setting up a company in India, is that you can go the automatic route. The automatic route, you just transfer some funds, you get a document, a form that has to be filled out. It's only an A4 form. It is stamped off. There are usually never any questions asked. It's not something difficult to do, but clearly it has to be done, and it cannot be forgotten, because otherwise you might have some authorities walking into your office or into your manufacturing site, and clearly that's not something you want to do. So if you think about exchange control taking place in one country, it usually means that they're doing it because they want to keep a close guard of what is happening in the economy at large, and that they believe that it's in the common good, so to speak, of the country to have this regulated. So one has to bear that in mind, and one should not see it as a hurdle that's not something you can overcome. It should be seen as something that just has to be worked out. And there are many things one can do in order to do this. Now, one scenario I would like to discuss is utilizing a different company as an intermediary company between conducting business in India, either in form of a merger and acquisition, or as taking on a holding company in another country. The way you would do this, you would have a UK company, and this UK company would have a subsidiary or create a subsidiary in a double taxation treaty country, like for example Malta or Mauritius or Cyprus. All these have very good double taxation treaties with India, as well as with the UK, with nearly all European countries, and many other countries too. So you would have intermediary company there, and utilize the double taxation treaties going inwards into Mauritius, for example, and then outwards towards India. The benefit you could have there is that you can extract your dividends on an annual basis back through this intermediary company and then back to the UK, and at a greater tax saving. That is obviously something that's interesting and is of great, well, it's very widely used. Some people use Mauritius. However, having said that, Mauritius is a jurisdiction that has come a bit into the limelight in recent years, but it's still being supported by the government, and that's an important one to mention, because if you think of the Vodafone case, I don't know if anybody has looked into this. There was a big scenario whereby a company, there was a Reliance Vodafone inter-exchange of shares, whereby the company was sold, and it was done in form of an offshore transfer, and then the authorities said, well, you can't do this. What happened there, the holding company which took over the telephone company was unfortunately a Cayman company, and this Cayman doesn't have a double taxation treaty with India, and therefore there was no protection. If this company would have gone to for example, a double taxation treaty country, then they could have made use of the double taxation treaty, and though the income tax authorities wouldn't have liked it, they still would have had the benefit of the the double taxation treaty. And that treaty is there clearly to be regarded by the income tax authorities as much as anybody else. Okay, so what can EFS do in the situation of a merger or an acquisition in India? Obviously, we can provide you with a list of companies that are presently divested from the state or from the government. We can provide you of a data bank of potential target company in the free sector. And the other big issue is obviously we have our ears very close to the ground, and the most important one is probably being able to deal with the RBI and all those permissions and licenses that have to be thought before you can actually go and conclude a merger and acquisition in India.